everyone! Last time that we read the Parker Inheritance, we ended right before chapter 24, so that's where I'm going to start up again. Chapter 24. After leaving the high school, Candace spent the next few hours in her room looking through the wall of yearbooks again, hoping to find anyone who could have been James Parker. She thought about calling Brandon to see what progress he'd made, but she didn't want to talk to him right then. It would have just reminded her of their run-in with the assistant principal. Candace finally gave up when her mother poked her head in her room. "I'm about to start dinner. Do you want to help?" Nodding, Candace crawled out of bed and followed her mom down the hallway. "Got a taste for anything?" her mom asked. "There's plenty to choose from." Candace's dad had gone shopping while he was in town and had stocked up on enough food to last for 2 weeks. "You pick," Candace said. "I'm not really hungry." Her mom grabbed a package of king salmon from the fridge and held it up to her. "Your father and his fancy foods," she muttered. "Grab a bowl. Why don't you start with the salad?" Candace searched the cabinets for a large bowl while her mom pulled food from the refrigerator. They worked side by side for a while, cleaning all the food, neither speaking. Finally, her mother asked, "Did something happen between you and Brandon?" Candace began to pull the lettuce apart. "No, what makes you think that?" "Juanita called about an hour ago. She said Brandon was pretty upset when she got home, but he wouldn't say why." She washed her hands, then patted them dry. "You sure everything's okay?" Candace ripped the lettuce into even smaller pieces. It felt good to be doing something with her hands. "It's nothing. Something stupid. I mean, silly." "Stupid, silly, I don't care what words you use." Her mother pulled the salad bowl away from her. "What happened?" Candace could feel the sting behind her eyes. "Someone vandalized one of the yearbooks we were looking at," she said. "And then the assistant principal accused us of trying to break into the school, or something like that." She looked at the floor. "Probably because we didn't look like high school kids." Her mom tilted Candace's face up. "Are you sure that's why? Or maybe it's 'cause we're black?" She said it like a question, like she was doubting that what she knew was true. Her mother opened her arms, welcoming Candace in. "Why are people so mean?" Candace asked once she had explained what had happened. "Oh, Fifi, yet." Her face was smashed into her mother's shirt. It was hard to breathe, but she didn't want to move. We weren't doing anything wrong." "Old habits, old opinions, die hard. He probably thinks all black kids are hoodlums." "It's not fair." "I know," her mom said, rocking and squeezing her tighter. "Mom, you're smushing me." "Sorry." She loosened her grip. "It's taking everything inside of me not to jump in the car and hunt down this assistant principal right now." She leaned back so she could see Candace. "I'll call Juanita tonight. She and I will figure something out." "What's his name?" "Mr. Rittenhauer. But Mom—" "No buts," she said. "I'm your mom. It's my job to deal with things like this. And I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. To you or to any other kid." "What about your writing?" Candace asked. "Your schedule?" "You are more important than that." She tapped Candace's nose. "You do know that, right? Whenever you need me, I'll always be there." Candace nodded. "I know, Mom." "Good." She let her daughter go. "Anything else you want to tell me?" Candace returned to the bowl of lettuce. There were a million things she should be talking about. The letter, Milo, Brandon, her dad, Danielle. She pushed those things out of her head. Those weren't important. At least not right then. "Are we poor?" she asked. "I'm a writer," her mother smiled. "Of course we are." "I'm serious, Mom. Are we really selling the house in Atlanta because it's too big? Or is it too expensive?" Her mother took a deep breath. "Maybe a little of both. We don't need all that extra room, and it costs a lot of money to heat and cool that house. But yes, the mortgage is really expensive too. Even with your father's alimony, it's a lot for us to cover." "Are we going to be okay once we sell the house?" "Yeah, I think. There will be an adjustment. I may take on a few more writing projects." "You've already got 3, though." "Maybe I'll teach," she said. "The community college is always looking for instructors." "You always said you couldn't teach and write at the same time." "Well, then maybe I won't write." Candace opened her mouth to argue, but her mother cut her off. "Don't worry. Things aren't that bad. And your father and I always have a backup plan, just in case." She looked at the fancy salmon. "Though I'll have to work on your father's spending habits first." Candace crossed her arms and pinched her sides. Since her mother was talking about money, maybe she'd be honest about a few other things too. "Maybe when Dad's at home, he's not buying groceries for just him," Candace said. When I hugged him the other day, he smelled like he was wearing new cologne. It was citrusy. Her mother began pulling spices from the cabinet. Salt, pepper, paprika, thyme, and oregano. Then she grabbed the cooking wine. It wasn't very strong at all, not like real wine, but Candace still felt a little sophisticated whenever her mother used it. He does have a girlfriend, doesn't he? She moved to block her mother from the fish. I heard you guys talking in the kitchen the other day. You mentioned someone named Danielle. I didn't say... Her mother rearranged the spices on the counter. You shouldn't eavesdrop. You can't always be sure you're hearing the right thing. So Dad's not seeing anyone? I didn't say that. So he is seeing someone. I didn't say that either, she sighed. This, my dear, is something you should take up with your father. All I'll say is, I just want him to be happy, and you know I'm not the right person for him. You guys sound a lot alike, you know. That's what happens when you're married for long enough. She leaned in and kissed Candace's forehead. Enough talk about your father and his love life. The big Juneteenth festival is on Saturday. Do you want to go? Sure, Candace said, grabbing a cucumber. But shouldn't you be writing? I'll get the writing done, I promise. Her mother rubbed some spice onto the fish. Your grandma started the festival when she was city manager. She always saw it as one of her best achievements. Her mother paused, and Candace thought she would say more, but she just flipped over the fish to season the other side. Candace began to cut up the cucumber. Can I invite Brandon to go to the festival too? I already did. Talked with his mom about it this afternoon. I figured it'd be good to have some friends there for moral support. Oh? Why? Because it's at Vickers Park, her mother said. The scene of the crime. Chapter 25. On Tuesday, after a little needling from Brandon, Candace put the Wallace yearbooks aside to help him run web searches for anything related to Luling Oilers baseball team or school desegregation in Lambert, since both related to Siobhan's parents. But after a few hours, it was clear they weren't making any real progress. Every once in a while, Brandon stepped out of the room. Candace went to the Atlanta real estate page to see if her house was on the market yet. It wasn't. Not yet. Later that afternoon, after running more web searches that didn't yield anything, Brandon said, I've been thinking. Your grandma wasn't the only person who got the letter. Parker contacted 4 other people. He reached for the letter and opened it. The mayor, the school district superintendent, the chair of the school board, and the editor of the Lambert Trader. He read, Maybe we should look for those people. Candace was already shaking her head. No way! Why not? They may know something. Well, if they did have information, they should have used it to help my grandma. Maybe they would have found the money. Maybe she wouldn't have gotten fired. Candace rubbed her grandmother's bracelet. Maybe she wouldn't be known as the crazy lady, she thought. For all we know, they'll want to split the money with us, Candace continued. Or worse, they'll tell my mom and she'll shut us down. She reopened the Wallace yearbook. How about this? If we're still stuck tomorrow, then we'll call them and ask them about the letter. Brandon scratched his head. We have to tell an adult about this letter eventually. I know, she said, but not yet, okay? The following day, instead of heading over to Brandon's first thing in the morning, Candace began the Weston game. It was good, really good, though she didn't plan on admitting that to Brandon. Candace had just reached the part where a second bomb went off when the phone rang. It's me, Brandon said. Can you come over? Yeah, I think. Bring the 1957 Perkins yearbook, he said. I want to show it to someone. Brandon, we're not going to talk about the letter, he said. Just hurry up and get over here. She peeked in her mother's office and told her that she was heading to Brandon's house. Her mother responded with a half-hearted wave, which Candace took as permission. It's open, Brandon called after she rang the bell. She followed Brandon's voice into the kitchen. He sat at the table with his grandfather and a woman she'd never seen before. This is Miss Kathy, Brandon said. My granddad's... Candace rolled her eyes. The boy couldn't even say the word. Girlfriend ain't a bad word, Miss Kathy said as she stood up from the table. Candace went to shake her hand, but the woman wrapped her in a hug. Miss Kathy was fairly heavy-set. Her mother would have used the term big-boned. And she squeezed Candace hard enough to make her lose her breath. So you're Miss Caldwell's granddaughter, she said after letting her go. She was a good woman. Passed away too soon. Candace nodded. seemed like everyone in the city knew her grandmother. Mr. Gibbs held the chair for Miss Kathy as she sat back down. Candace put the yearbook on the table, then sat between him and Brandon. "Thanks," Brandon said. "I was telling Granddad and Miss Kathy about our research." "Yeah, research," Mr. Gibbs said, grinning. "Back in my day, we would have called it courting." "Granddad," Brandon groaned as the adults laughed. "You promise." Candace could feel her face burning. "Granddad suggested we interview some people who may have attended Perkins back then," Brandon said. "And then Miss Kathy offered to help us find them." "I'm a Perkins alumna as well," she said. "Class of 74. A lot of older alums moved away. Lambert lost a lot of jobs when I-26 was built to the north, and then again when the textile plant and auto factory shut down." Candace assumed the textile plant she mentioned was the one owned by the Allen family, and the auto factory must have been the Solera plant that Parker relocated to Colorado. Miss Kathy adjusted her glasses. "I don't know many of the alums from the 50s, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to see if any of the names rung a bell." She took the yearbook from Candace. 1957. I was a baby back then, still in diapers." Miss Kathy opened the yearbook and began flipping through the pages. She would mumble a name to herself every so often before shaking her head. It seemed like most of the people she knew had died, or moved for work, or moved to be close to their kids. Then she paused. Maybe." She positioned the book so she and Mr. Gibbs could see it. "Is that Ellie Farmer?" "Yeah, it could be," he said. "I'm pretty sure her maiden name is McElvin. She married Gene Farmer right out of high school, I think." "Didn't they move to Columbia a few years ago?" Candace scooted closer to Miss Kathy so she could get a better look at the yearbook. Ellie McElvin was thin and dark-skinned with black bangs straight against her forehead. "I'll see if I can get her number," Miss Kathy said. And I'm going to stop right there, as we're running out of time. And I want you to make some predictions about what they might find out about this Ellie McElvin girl that Miss Kathy recognizes from the yearbook.